Croesus was the king of Lydia and the richest person in the world. Just before embarking on a war with Cyrus of Persia, Croesus took counsel from the famous oracle at Delphi. And he was told, if you cross the river Halys, you will destroy a mighty empire. Now, Croesus did not consider this prophecy carefully. He assumed that the oracle meant that he would destroy the Persians' mighty empire when he crossed the river. But when he crossed the river with his army, it was his own mighty empire that was destroyed. Moral of this story is, prophecies have to be examined carefully to determine what they mean. Now, you're watching an In Favor teaching series titled Treasuring Your Words from Heaven, what to do and what not to do with your prophetic words. And we're walking you through 14 ways to respond to your personal prophecies. So we're assuming you've received a prophetic word and you were just thrilled that God was thinking about you, and you were very careful to record and transcribe the word, and you are faithfully reviewing it, keeping it in front of you, reading it over it regularly, reminding yourself what God has said to you. But there may be some parts of the prophecy that you do not understand. And so, this video describes response number 3. You know what the prophecy says, but now it's time to make an effort to discern it, to discern what the prophecy means. And I'm using that term discern to mean that you're working to understand it, especially any parts of it that aren't clear. Types and symbols, or numbers and colors, or maybe references to unfamiliar people and things. But you're making an effort, you're doing your very best to interpret it correctly. So here are 4 suggested questions out of many, many others that you can ask about your personal prophecies. And just keep in mind that in Luke 1, this is what Mary did when the angel came and brought her that amazing prophetic word. She kept pondering what it could mean, and she asked the angel questions about it. And in Acts 10, this is what Peter did when God gave him that prophetic vision. He reflected on it from all angles, and he questioned the messengers that came, and he questioned Cornelius himself. So, questioning your prophecy is a good thing if it's leading you to understand what God is saying to you. So, question number 1. Does the Bible speak to this? Are there passages that resemble your prophecy? Are there verses with similar language or actions that echo your prophetic word? Robert Heidler says many of the common prophetic pictures and symbols are explained in the Bible. Let's say your word has the image of trees growing in a field. Well, what does the Bible say about trees that are growing, or about fields? Is that of any help to you? And a concordance or a topical Bible may be of assistance to you at that point. So, first question, does the Bible speak to this? Question number 2, does this prophecy speak to my situation? Is it describing something happening to me, or something that may happen or will happen in the future? When Robert Heidler's church was transitioning to more spiritual things, they went through very difficult days. And during that time, his wife had a prophetic dream. It was a dream about a baby that was born prematurely and wasn't expected to live. But then in her dream, the baby grew and became very plump and healthy. And she woke up and she told her husband, that's the church. It was born early, but it is going to be fine. And it was. And she repeatedly had prophetic dreams involving children all through the crucial points of the church's history, and by then they had learned to accept those as revelation and encouragement from the Lord. So, does the Bible speak to this? Does this prophecy speak to my situation? Third question, have I asked God to give me understanding about this? Have I prayed that he would show me the meaning? When Jeremiah had the vision about the baskets full of figs, he went directly to the Lord and God told him what it meant. And when Daniel had a dream he did not understand, he prayed and he fasted for 21 days until an angel came and gave him the interpretation. So God really wants you to know what the prophetic word means. He wants you to understand his will, and he will help you. And then the final question, are there gifted people that I can ask? have I sought advice from trusted and experienced and prophetic-minded people that I know. When Pharaoh didn't understand his dream, he turned to Joseph, who told him what it meant. When Nebuchadnezzar was puzzled by his dream, he went to Daniel, who said, "Let me pray about it overnight, and God will tell me what it means." And he did. So the basic principle is, if you can't interpret a word, go to someone who can. Find someone with a gift of interpretation or who has done this before and you trust and you know, and ask them to help. An example. Barbara Wentroble describes her first experience with prophetic words at a Christian gathering. She was new to the supernatural operations of the Holy Spirit. She did not understand the purpose of prophetic words, and she was not expecting anything miraculous to happen. And then the speaker began to give words of knowledge and release prophecies. She says, "I had never been in a meeting like that before. Nothing anywhere close to this had ever happened in my church. As I sat quietly, I found myself being pulled in two directions. On the one hand, I had no experience to relate this to, no way to judge what was happening. On the other hand, I knew that somehow the Lord was at work." Then it happened. The speaker gave a word of knowledge, information revealed to her by the Holy Spirit that she could not otherwise have known, and then a prophetic word, both of which pierced my thoughts. "Someone is here today," the woman said, "who when you were a little girl said to the Lord, 'Lord, I will be a missionary for you.'" Barbara says, "I barely dared to breathe," as she continued. "You will be a missionary for the Lord," she said, "but you will not do it in the way that you thought." Barbara says, "I felt as if arrows were plunging into my heart." Then, as if a word of knowledge and prophetic guidance were not enough for me to try to fathom, I saw a vision. At the time, I did not even know what to call that experience. I only knew that my spiritual eyes were open and I was seeing a Sunday school classroom from years past. I seemed to be positioned over the classroom looking down, and inside the room was a little girl who looked as if she was about 8 years old. I heard the child speaking in prayer to the Lord say these words, "Lord, I will be a missionary for you." Barbara says, "Then I knew that little girl was me. Until that moment, I had totally forgotten about my commitment to the Lord so long ago." As I drove home from the meeting that day, questions flooded my mind. Notice the questions that she asked. How did the speaker know what happened to me when I was young? How did I forget my promise to the Lord? Why did we not have this type of ministry in my church? I had never received prophetic ministry or words before that day. I certainly never had visions, but here I was, experiencing all of that within just a few minutes. But there was an even bigger question. How could I ever do what the Lord said I would do? She continues, "Fulfillment of these prophetic words that he placed in my heart seemed unlikely. Many years had already passed since I had spoken that prayer in Sunday school. I was now an adult. I had a husband and 3 small children. How could I ever do what I promised the Lord I would do? And what about her words that I would do it in a way that was different from what I thought? What did that mean?" Somehow I knew that I would never be the same from that moment on. I also knew that I had much to learn. Today, I consider myself a missionary for the Lord. I am privileged to minister in many nations around the world. I did not move to the jungles of Africa. In fact, I have made only one trip to Africa and stayed in a fairly nice hotel. God had fulfilled that prophetic promise in my life, and he did it in a way that was different from the way I thought he would do it. Wow. Now, the good news about all this is that God is a revealing God, and he wants you to understand his words. So he's not playing hide and seek with you. He truly desires you to know his will. So when it comes to prophetic words, you're the detective in this situation, and God will give you the clues that you need and are searching for. Now, what if you've made the effort to carefully examine your prophetic word and you're prayerfully asking questions and you're seeking the interpretation, but you're no closer to understanding it? What then? Well, just wait. Relax. Take a deep breath. Don't worry. In fact, the last video in this series, number 14, is don't obsess over it. Continue seeking the Lord, trust him, and he will give you understanding in his perfect time. Learn to appreciate this process of pressing in to find God's will, because it's an adventure all on its own. Now, how can you make this response your own? Have you received prophecies that were ambiguous at first and then became clear to you later? Well, if so, then what did you do while you waited? How did you open the way for the understanding to come? Or how did you get in the way, which is what I have done often with my own prophetic promises? And are you dealing with a difficult prophecy right now, right this minute? I encourage you to keep on questioning, keep on reflecting, keep on pressing in, because if you stay with it, you will eventually discern it clearly and correctly. In closing, receive this encouragement from Helen Calder. Sometimes a personal prophecy is like a puzzle piece. You are not sure how or where it fits in the picture until more pieces have been put into place. And then, when you do see the fulfillment of the prophecy, you are blown away. Next video, once you've discerned it and you feel you understand what it says and what it means, you must take a critical step. Response number 4 is, don't twist it to mean something else. This is something that's very hard not to do, and the consequences can be devastating.